I've said this in a few other movie reviews before, but on Tuesdays in my town, we have Discount Tuesday for the movie theaters where every screening is $5, no matter the time. So when I have those Tuesdays off, I go to the films that I'm not quite looking forward to catch up and to have movie reviews for. So last Tuesday I saw The Shack. I also saw Before I Fall. Unlike The Shack, Before I Fall, I was the only person in the theater at that time. Yeah, The Shack, it was a packed theater. Before I Fall, I was the only one there. And I liked Before I Fall. Now, I didn't see a lot of trailers for Before I Fall, but I saw enough in theaters that I remembered what this movie was about before I went to go see it. It's another one of those movies that has a sort of Groundhog Day feel to it. In this particular movie, it is set around a teenage girl who keeps reliving the same day over and over again. A day in which where she ultimately was going to die. She keeps reliving this day over and over again until she figures out how she can change everything, how she can get this day to stop, what she needs to do for this particular day. And that's about as much as I can go into the plot without spoiling anything. Now, the family members I normally see movies with, my cousin and my sister, both of which wasn't looking forward to this film. And so yes, I went alone to this movie and I was the only one in the theater, period. I actually kind of like that sometimes because it feels like I have my own private screening to a movie. I get a kick out of that. And sometimes it makes me ultimately like the movie a little bit more than I probably normally would. And so that could be the case for this movie, but I did legitimately like it. So ultimately, what did I like about the film? Well, I did like the character arc of our main character, and I liked the route that the movie was going. One of the things I didn't realize was going to happen was our main character is a popular girl in school. She's kind of like a mean girl. I mean, ultimately, she's not the mean one. She hangs around other popular girls. One of them is the queen bee, not her character. She's more of a follower. Ultimately, her life is going well for her. She's a popular kid. She goes to the sickest parties, and they get to make out with the hottest boys. Ultimately, she starts off as a pretty shallow person with a tinge of hopefulness and a tinge of, you know what, she's really much better on the inside than she plays it up to be. Or she doesn't quite understand that she's the mean girl and that she's one of the popular kids. But as the movie progresses, she gets to realize just how meaningless her popularity in high school is, how to treat people better, and what's more important than the shallowness of being a popular kid in school. Or at least a movie's version of a popular kid in school. She starts thinking that if this is truly her last day, what does she want to be remembered by? She has the same sort of growth you would expect for this type of character. But honestly, it did pretty good. I did ultimately like the Groundhog Day feel of it, and sort of the Mean Girls feel to it as well. It felt like a nice mesh between those two movies, but while at the same time not being anywhere near as good as those other two movies. And if you think that, oh, this is going to get repetitive because it's the same day over and over again, ultimately it kept itself from being repetitive to me. When it comes to the first day, okay, it lays out the groundwork of what this day and what kind of things might happen in this day, but every time you get a new day, it is something different. Sometimes she chooses different paths, different dialogues happen. Sometimes we see scenes that were excluded from the first day so that we can still discover new things with this day. She makes choices that alters each day, so it never really feels like it completely repeats itself over and over again. Each day has something new about it that makes it feel like a different day even though it's the same day. Ultimately, the only day that seems the most repetitive is the second day, which makes sense because that's the whole deja vu feeling that she has during that moment. That's the moment where she starts feeling, has this happened before, and am I going crazy? And that's the deja vu moment in this film, and it works. And I did ultimately like the subplots of this film, one of which is she's with this popular kid, but she realizes that he's not the one for her, and maybe it's this lesser known, uncooler kid that she used to be friends with, which is her true love. So yeah, there is a romance subplot in this movie, which I don't mind because normally in a young adult novel adaptation, usually these films have a subplot romance or a main focus on the romance. In this one, it is more of a side thing. It doesn't feel like it's forced in there just to please young adult novel adaptation film goers, which I'm sure is a thing. And ultimately, there's a side character who's always bullied by our main girl and her group of friends, and I liked how that subplot turned out. And even though there isn't any actress or actor that I would write home about saying, wow, this was a really great performance, I think all of them did fine, and none of them felt bad to me in the slightest. Even though I did ultimately like this film, and it was a nice spin on the sort of Groundhog Day feel movie, there ultimately are a few things that I didn't like quite so much. For one, when it comes to the narration of the film, there's some really bad, cheesy lines. Even with the dialogue as well, there are some moments where it just is painful to hear. While at other times, the narration of the film will have some nice insights and have something really deep and meaningful. Those insightful, poetic moments in the narration might still be cheesy, but it's more insightful than some of the other cheesy dialogues and other cheesy moments that happen in the film. And I definitely have to say this because since our main character is part of the popular Mean Girls, it is hard to like our main character at the beginning of the film. If you can get through the first day of this film, it only gets better as the movie progresses. Because it's kind of important to have that contrast at the beginning of the film where she's part of the Mean Girls, where they do horrible, nasty things, where they are very shallow people that you don't quite care about. Because it's ultimately part of her progression as a character, as a main character, where she becomes better, more insightful, more kind, becomes less of the popular girl at the beginning of the film. And so if you can get through that day, which is the most annoying day in the entire film, then Before I Fall only gets better as it progresses. You just have to make it through that first day. I didn't like the soundtrack in this movie at all. I didn't know any of the songs, didn't quite care for any of the dance pop songs that are throughout this movie. But I won't knock too many points off of that because it does fit the type of movie it is. And so for some people, this would be a good soundtrack. For me, it's not. Another thing that's going to really make or break this film for you is if you like the ending. Personally, I liked the ending. I liked how it went. And I liked how they didn't pull any punches with the ending because it is very bittersweet. And I won't go too much into detail because ultimately it would be a spoiler. Personally, I like the ending. A lot of other people will find the ending terrible, probably will think, oh, well, this movie was completely pointless because of that ending. And I get that, I understand that. For me, I thought it was bittersweet. Similar to La La Land, we had a very bittersweet ending. La La Land is a much better ending, but it has that same sort of feel where it's bittersweet, and I liked it. So overall, I thought Before I Fall was pretty good. It's a little bit above average, but at the same time, most of it is pretty average and just sort of a movie that I simply like. And I probably won't remember this movie after a couple of years. Heck, I probably won't even remember this movie at the end of the year. But for what it's worth, I did enjoy it, and I was the only person in the theater at the time. Now when I score a film, I look at like 9 different factors of the film, score each of them out of 5, and then I add them up and divide them, and yeah, I do an average score, then I have a personal score, add that to the average score, make another average score. And this movie is right in between 3 and 3.5 stars for me. So much so that I'm wondering what I should round to because I don't do quarters, I only do halves and wholes. I'm definitely debating as I'm doing this review whether I should round down or round up despite the score. Well, I guess since it is more of a, I think it was like 2.3 something, I guess I'm going to round it up to 3.5 stars. But ultimately it is more of a 3.25 star movie for me, which is pretty good. So, did you see Before I Fall? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment below. And since we do have a few movies with that sort of Groundhog style to it, like Groundhog's Day and Before I Fall and Edge of Tomorrow, I'm sure there's a few other ones, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. What is your favorite movie with that sort of repeating the same day over and over again? What is your favorite movie? Mine would probably be Edge of Tomorrow, simply because, don't hate me for this, I haven't seen Groundhog's Day yet. I mean, it's one of those classic movies that's on my to-do list, or on my to-watch list, but just haven't gotten around to seeing it. And if you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and check out my movie reviews of 2015, 2016, or 2017. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.